Welcome to Undeterred, where in 5 minutes or less, we discuss issues that affect women. Well, today we're going to talk about one of our challenges. Sometimes as a woman, I think we take one step forward and then two steps back. Yes, I have to admit that in the last 20 years, women have certainly made advancements, but sometimes I'm left scratching my head. In March, everyone was cheering about the fact that NASA would have the first all-female spacewalk. Now, I'm not so caught up in the fact that it was going to be all women doing the spacewalk. However, on the other hand, if they're qualified to do it, which they were, then why not all women? And then we learned that the first all-female spacewalk is scrapped because the International Space Station was not carrying enough spacesuits in the right size. And this goes off in my mind like, what? If they were planning on it and training for it, then why didn't NASA prepare for it in advance? Yes, I know that these suits are expensive to make, and it was not cost effective to make more in the right size. But then why even announce an all-female spacewalk in the first place if you can't do it? Now, I'm not into conspiracy theories, but sometimes I wonder what in the world is happening. Well, what might be happening in this situation may have been what we call second generational bias. This can be defined as a subtle bias that configures how we look at and handle situations. An article in the Harvard Business Review describes second generational bias as unintentional, not meant to exclude anybody, doesn't mean to cause harm to any one individual, but it's in our cultural psyche, and it's based on these subtle societal stereotypes that's expected of men and women. Otherwise, we don't even know this bias is happening or that we personally are being biased towards someone else. It's like there's something in the water which suddenly causes us to act a certain way. Well, I think it's important for both men and women to monitor our thoughts and beliefs and start to recognize our biases, even the subtle ones. So what do we do as women? Well, number one, be aware that the second generational bias is out there. As pointed out in the Harvard Business Review, when women recognize it, that it's happening, it empowers us to take actions to deal with it. Number two, don't get mad at others because it's not intentional. But do talk to others about the bias if you see it, including other women. Women can be the worst offenders in holding biases against other women. Number three, don't say yes to taking on a new task unless the organization is willing to give you the tools to succeed, like a well-fitting spacesuit, or at least gives you the same tools that would be given to your male counterpart. Now, this may often be our fault as women because we're afraid to ask, but that's a whole nother topic. And number four, watch your own biases. For example, have you ever thought that a man got the job just because he was a man? I'm sure this is true in some cases, but not in all cases, and can be our personal biases that we carry with us. So the challenge this week is to start to observe societal biases. Some will be very obvious, others very subtle, like second generation biases. If you observe a bias, name it, and then speak to it in a gracious and inviting language to the person or people who are displaying the bias. Remember, Colossians 4:6 tells us that our conversation should always be full of grace and seasoned with salt. And then start to be aware of your own biases and work hard at changing your mindset. Until next week, be undeterred.